Do you think we've been stuck on Skyrim for too long? Maybe it will never die, but after so many years, it might be time to try something else. Unlike other lists, I'm not telling you about third-person RPGs that kinda vibe like the Elder Scrolls, but actual first-person ones. Today we have groundbreaking new innovations and games recapturing the past. But will any hold a candle to the supernova that is Skyrim? Let's find out, and welcome to the best first-person RPGs on the way in 2024. For a hugely ambitious project, the Wayward Realms. Under the direction of Ted Peterson and Julian Lafay, lead developers of the team behind the original Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall, now called Once Lost Games, they are creating a new open-world fantasy RPG where choice and consequence are experienced on a scale never attempted before. That's right, this is as Elder Scrolls as you can get, but in the classic sense. Daggerfall was a game that was way ahead of its time, with over 200,000 square kilometers of mostly not all that much, but it was still a technological marvel. And this time, about 3 decades later, they're trying it again. A massive world, a constantly evolving experience and story, real role-playing, and a world full of lore, taking place on an archipelago of kingdoms and factions and dungeons and monsters and all of that stuff. It sounds amazing, and we've been getting more and more glimpses of the game over the past few years, and now it's starting to seem like it's actually a real something. It's hard to tell how this will turn out. The Wayward Realms could be the first step in the next generation of RPGs, but it's got such huge expectations that it's unclear if this is going to actually be a fun game. Either way, it's going to be very, very interesting seeing how these veteran Bethesda developers take on the Elder Scrolls. And then we have Return to Nangrim. This is a dark, first-person fantasy adventure with survival and RPG elements. Craft, explore, and survive an abandoned world, so grab your axe and shield and reclaim the mountains together with your animal companion. So this is taking the first-person fantasy RPG, but also mixing in some survival gameplay elements, which could be a nice take. I mean, survival mods are always a thing in Skyrim and other Bethesda games, adding in hunger bars and having to survive the cold and seasons and stuff like that. It's always something that people want to have in these kind of open-world RPGs, you know, a survival mode. And this one seems to be leaning into that. Promising epic locations filled with secrets, the ability to find and forge weapons, becoming a master blacksmith, brewing legendary beers and cooking delicious dwarven dishes, learning a dwarven runic language, some procedural elements, and this world is dark, so your torch is going to be important. As a side note, this one is also in VR. At the time of recording, Return to Nangrim has a free demo on Steam, so you can go check it out and see what they've got on offer right now. There's no particular release window for the full version, it's just coming soon, but since there is a free demo, if you're intrigued, just have a look and see if Return to Nangrim is the Skyrim competitor that you're looking for. Going a bit more dungeon crawly, Monomyth. This one revives the classic virtues of the dungeon crawling genre. Fight your way through an immersive, interconnected, and highly interactive underworld. Unravel the mysteries of Lysandria and challenge the evil that lurks below the ancient fortress. So this one is leaning into the dungeon crawling aspect, so it does seem like, for the most part, many of these games trying to take on the Skyrim formula tend to focus onto one aspect of it. Skyrim is kind of a bit of everything. The last game was more survival, this one is more dungeon crawly. And I think there's a lot of people which are hungry for another dungeon crawler, since The Legend of Grimrock seems like they're not making a third one. The developers said they're not really interested in making a third Legend of Grimrock. So maybe Monomyth is the one for you. Promising to be an action-packed first-person RPG in a living, breathing world, free character development, open-ended level design, and a unique setting with monsters and monstrosities. This one does look and sound pretty good so far. Good news is, there is a free demo for Monomyth, so anyone can go have a look, just try it out. The rise of free demos over the past few years is a good thing, so if you're hungering and hankering for a new dungeon crawler, Monomyth could be it for you. Taking a sidestep from fantasy, we've got Repo Man. In this quirky first-person RPG, you are a debt collector. You track down debtors, claim their assets, strike deals, deceive, seduce, intimidate, solve mysteries, uncover conspiracies, and dabble in the occult. So, this one is still kind of fantasy, but it's sort of a mix of steampunk and cyberpunk. So we have our steampunk worlds, we have our cyberpunk worlds. This game, Repo Man, is somehow mixing both steampunk and cyberpunk, and it's actually kinda working. It looks really cool. Basically, you play a pretty downtrodden person, and you are hunting down other downtrodden people. It's a dystopian future? Past? It's a bit unclear about the timeline here, but it's a dystopian timeline, and you'll be negotiating and persuading your way through things. You can duke it out in some fisticuff combat, taking and selling to make sure assets get where they're supposed to be, and it's supposed to be a fantastic story with great acting. That's the objective anyway. Considering all the other games on this list, I think Repo Man is sort of a nice little sidestep to things. You know, adding a bit of a different flavor to the genre. At the time of recording, it does say its planned release date is 2023, but we are approaching almost the end of the year now, and it's not set a release date, so this could very well be delayed into 2024, hence me listing it. But, you know, if we're lucky, we might get it a little bit earlier. Who knows? Anyway, I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on Repo Man. Hey, now that you're a bit into the list, I'm sure you're enjoying it, so it'd be greatly appreciated if you can like the video. Alright, next game. Lunacid. Here we have a first-person dungeon crawler inspired by old FromSoft games like Shadow Tower and King's Field. So we're not talking about Dark Souls here, we're talking about older games. And this is going for that retro vibe. It does sort of feel like the old Daggerfall, but with some modern improvements. The situation here is that long ago, a great beast arose from the sea, covered the earth in a poison fog, and now those deemed undesirable are thrown into a great well. I have a feeling that's going to be you. As I mentioned earlier, dungeon crawling is a little bit of a gap in the market, and it seems like some games are taking it on with that kind of old arena/Daggerfall vibe. So although this one does have kind of the dated graphics look, it is intentional, and Lunacid has been going through early access since about the middle of 2022, so it has been a while, and they're planning to fully release sometime in 2024. At the time of recording, this game has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam. Thousands of user reviews at 96% positive. We know user reviews aren't always a full indicator of how good or bad a game is. However, thousands of reviews at 96% positive, not that many games get to that level of a positive reaction. So, don't let the dated visuals hold you back from trying Lunacid. Next up, we've got Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. Step into a dark reimagination of Arthurian legends in this first-person open-world RPG. Explore a world stuck in an everlasting autumn. Witness falling legends and make meaningful choices woven into a complex, branching storyline. You'll be creating your unique character, exploring a dark world full of freedom, choosing your playstyle with close combat, bow, magic, stealth, and other fighting styles. This game is completely fully voice acted through all the quests. There's a bunch of challenging dungeons to conquer. There's crafting, cooking, brewing potions, lockpicking, mining, and even fishing. Of course, you can't forget fishing. And you have to discover the mystery behind the death of King Arthur and the current fall of Avalon. Now, Tainted Grail has been going through early access since about the middle of 2023, to very positive reviews, about 80% positive right now. And if you're not too sure about jumping into early access, there is a free demo as well. So if you're thinking that this might be the game for you, then you can always just give it a bit of a try. But if you're waiting for full release, they are looking at sometime in 2024. Visually, it doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty good. Maybe not next gen, but still pretty decent. And gameplay seems to be coming together. There's regular updates and they've been adding more content. And they're pretty clear about what is being worked on. So overall, this project, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, seems to be coming together. It's going well through early access, and we should see this finish over the next year. For a low-poly game that kind of took people by surprise, The Bloodline. This is a sandbox adventure RPG that lets you play your way. Reforge bonds between kingdoms, explore the wilds, craft and plan adventures, and wield mighty weapons or magic as you prepare for what is to come. A journey is not written in stone, but in blood. So you'll be following quest lines and killing many enemies as you roam the world freely at your own pace, allowing organic opportunities to arise. Now, I mentioned reforming bonds. That would be between kingdoms, which will be constructing your village and preparing the world for the return of the unforgiven. So a kind of apocalyptic event is on the way, and you got to be ready. There are various guilds. You'll be hunting magical creatures in the wilds. There is crafting, cooking, fishing, brewing, and all of that good stuff. And you are supposed to be able to develop your character how you like, with over 500 skills to unlock, and druid transformation abilities and necromancer stuff, so there is a lot of gameplay here. The one thing that will sort of give people pause is the low poly graphics, which I know not everyone is a fan of. However, going low poly can allow for certain other things. Now that's the whole point of low poly, that it allows for a much bigger, diverse and detailed world because you're not held back by photorealistic graphics. Does the Bloodline do that? Well, it's in early access right now, and so far it's been getting a very positive response on Steam. But it's still early days. The full release is supposed to be sometime in 2024, and we'll have to see if the Bloodline can really flesh out all of its gameplay to make this something truly special. Sticking with the low poly, Ardenfall. This is a first-person RPG set in a world of intricate politics and ancient cultures. Explore rain-drenched wetlands and forgotten dungeons full of danger. Meet countless interesting characters with unique dialogue and quests, and leave your mark on this mysterious world. So this game is also a low poly-ish art style with kind of a different visual vibe to it, and you are supposed to have meaningful character creation, interactions with a unique range of characters, a bunch of combat playstyles with throwing of potions, single-use spells, throwing knives, fire, all of that, and various weapon choices. And there's supposed to be a powerful dialogue system where you make choices depending on your stats, traits, and much more. So talking to characters and interacting with them and that kind of personal stuff should allow you to have very interesting outcomes. But that can be very difficult to pull off, and we haven't seen all that much of Ardenfall yet. There is a free demo, so that's good news. There is something playable that you can check out. We don't know when the full release of Ardenfall will be, so we can have a play around with the demo right now, and they will probably require feedback to see what people really want, and then we'll see how Ardenfall develops over the next year. For a sequel that's been a long time coming, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Here we have a vampire RPG. Fight your way through a modern-day Seattle on the brink of an open war as an elder vampire. Meet the power players, ally yourself, and decide who will rule and what the city will become. In this game, you are the monster. Blood sustains you and powers your vampiric disciplines. You'll stalk and feed on the city's population by night and use your supernatural powers or raw persuasion on civilians to lure them into deep, dark alleys to sate your hunger. This is a world of darkness, and you live in the dark. A vampire game is always exciting, but we have been waiting on this one for a while now. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, besides having a long title, was also announced a long time ago, and we've been sort of seeing glimpses and bits of it over time, and it seems like it is now finally on the way. It is set for a release window sometime in 2024, but the hype is real, and it's got a lot to live up to. Could this game actually be everything people want from a vampire RPG? Maybe, or maybe not. I'm a little bit cautious, but we'll see how it goes. And then the Skyrim competitor from Obsidian Entertainment, Avowed. This is a first-person fantasy RPG from the creators of a long line of RPGs. And when this was first announced, I was like, finally, someone is finally taking on the exact Skyrim formula, but maybe it's going to be better. And I was like, this could be great competition. But then Xbox bought Obsidian, and I'm like, okay. And then Xbox bought Bethesda, and I'm like, oh, okay. So basically Avowed and Skyrim, Avowed and the Elder Scrolls series are now basically cousins under the same company. So are they really competing at this point? Microsoft will probably make sure they don't compete. But we're definitely going to be seeing this one first. It's currently set for a release window in 2024, and this one is set in the world of Eora. Same world as Pillars of Eternity, by the way, which is one of my favorite universes. And generally from what we've seen, this looks really cool. It seems like it's taking on that sort of Skyrim setup, but with a little bit better combat and maybe a cool, interesting story, but we really, honestly, it's hard to judge it at this point. Obsidian Entertainment has been doing pretty good work in recent years, so hopefully Avowed does skyrocket to something amazing. We've gone from a little teaser to a proper gameplay trailer. Well, I say gameplay, I mean it looks kinda like gameplay. There's no user interface or anything, and that's always a sign where I'm like, okay, maybe it's a bit too curated. Hopefully in 2024 or anytime sooner, we will get a proper look at some raw gameplay to see what is actually going to be delivered for Avowed. Now, considering we're getting Avowed in 2024, it's unlikely we'll get this one, but we might see something cool. It's also from Obsidian Entertainment, and it's the Outer Worlds 2. So I'm not betting that this will release in 2024, but we might get some more reveals or more interesting news about the Outer Worlds 2. The Outer Worlds, the first one, was sort of like Fallout in space and was Obsidian's attempt at taking on the Fallout series by Bethesda. Ever since they did New Vegas, I think they've been hankering to get back into that kind of game, and the Outer Worlds 1 was a relatively good success. Outer Worlds 2, all we have is a teaser, which says pretty much nothing, and it actually says in the trailer itself that it means nothing, but it is in the works. So I just want to mention it here because The Outer Worlds 2 is a first-person RPG that will sort of take on the Bethesda formula, but we will be getting Avowed first and then The Outer Worlds after that. How much of a gap is unclear. It's something for us to keep our eyes on. Okay, then I have to mention a couple games because if I don't, people will ask about it. But we are not getting in 2024 the Cyberpunk 2077 sequel. That's right, if you haven't heard, since they've released Phantom Liberty, the DLC for Cyberpunk 2077, and patched the game over the past couple years to be something that I think everyone pretty much loves now, Cyberpunk 2077 is now working on a sequel. So it's not the end of the series, it's not the end of the Cyberpunk 2077 universe. We are getting a sequel, but let's be honest, we're not getting it in 2024. But it is being worked on, so you can keep an eye on the news. Not to mention, CD Projekt Red is also working on the next Witcher trilogy, So they've got their hands full, and it's unclear when these games will release, and any rumor or any even announcement by these companies or financial reports or whatever, although they could indicate things, they're not necessarily going to be true at the end of the day. They might be part of the plans now, but maybe a year from now, plans change. So anyone telling you they know anything about the Cyberpunk 2077 sequel besides that it is currently in development, well, it's just basically a guess. But there you go, that is in the works. In a similar vein, I do have to mention in this list The Elder Scrolls 6. It's been half a decade since they announced that they have been working on The Elder Scrolls 6. We've seen a lovely rocky landscape and a bit of shiny water under the sun, but nothing. Nothing since that teaser over 5 years ago. And based on recent rumors and reports, we're not going to see anything till at least 2026, 2027 likely. Maybe even 2028. It's a long way out. So we are not getting The Elder Scrolls 6. Again, we know absolutely nothing. Even if Bethesda themselves, even if Todd Howard has said something specific about The Elder Scrolls 6, even if Microsoft says, oh, we're only gonna put The Elder Scrolls 6 on Xbox, it's not coming to PlayStation. I mean, it's so far out. Plans change. Microsoft could say, no, Elder Scrolls 6 will be an Xbox exclusive. But like 3 years from now, they'll be like, okay, no, we'll add it to the PlayStation, you know? So we really know nothing. And until we actually see real Elder Scrolls 6 gameplay, I would recommend you forget about it. Alright, then for a look back into the past, but it is waltzing forward, Daggerfall Unity. So, a lot of these games stem from Daggerfall, in one way or another. Of course, Skyrim came from Oblivion, which came from Morrowind, which came from Redguard, which came from Daggerfall. And although there was a developer change between Daggerfall and Morrowind, and the sort of direction those games went shifted quite a bit from massive procedurally generated worlds into more curated, smaller places, technology is starting to bring things back to allowing massive worlds. And we can see Bethesda with Starfield going for that large procedural kind of universe with their 1,000+ planets, right? Bethesda is starting to go back into that Daggerfall direction. And Interkarma has been working on Daggerfall Unity, a engine replacement and revival of Daggerfall. And at this point, it's pretty interesting to get into right now, particularly because there's an active modding scene. So you can not just get Daggerfall Unity, which is Daggerfall but better, but there's a whole bunch of graphics mods, gameplay mods, systems, everything to make the experience better and more developed. And moving forward, Daggerfall Unity is only going to be getting better. If you haven't tried Daggerfall, then I can highly recommend you at least give it a shot. The game is old school, it's hard, it's difficult, but once you kind of get it, it starts to make sense, and then you start to see why it's really special. So, go have a look at Daggerfall Unity. And I didn't make an RPG list last year for 2023, so I do want to just mention this one game I found, which is pretty obscure right now. It has already released, but it's called Islands of the Caliph. I mean, as you can see, this is an old school inspired game. Pixel art, very dungeon crawly, very kind of Daggerfall kind of vibe. But it's just such a really interesting approach to the genre. It's literally 1980s style dungeon crawler with an open world across islands. This kind of feels like a scaled down version of what the Wayward Realms is trying to be. And I just thought it was so interesting. It's only got few reviews, but at 90% positive, and there's a free demo. And I just wanted to show this game off in this list because although we're looking forward to 2024, this one released towards the end of 2023, and I think it might be worth checking out if you're looking forward to all of these other games, at least for a little step into the demo. It might be something that you'd be into. There's numerous mythical enemies, a bunch of weapons to choose from, a dynamic map system, a grid-based movement thing, so it kind of feels like Legend of Grimrock, and might be a nice nostalgic time with something new. So yeah, have a quick look at Islands of the Caliph. There you have it. Press the like button and get games using the GOG referral link below to support videos like this one. Thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members who really support this channel and keep videos like these being made. Join if you want your name on future videos. If you want to stay in the know for another genre, go to the next list video linked on screen, as I'm sure first-person RPG fans like yourself would not want to miss all the classic adventures and third-person RPGs in the other lists. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.